Welcome to my channel Tales Beyond the Porch. I have set the stage and let's hear it from our narrator.
I froze the moment she said it. Not because of desire, not even because of surprise. I froze because of how calm she sounded, like she was talking about the weather, like she had already decided something long before I even realized there was a decision to make. If you want to look, just ask. The words settled between us, heavy and still. I can still remember the smell of fresh-cut grass drifting through the air, the soft golden light of late afternoon stretching across her porch, and the strange feeling that whatever my life had been before that sentence, it was already slipping away from me. I am 38 years old, not young enough to pretend I do not understand my own feelings, not old enough to feel safe from them either. I moved into that neighborhood in Raleigh, North Carolina after my divorce. I told myself I wanted peace, routine, something simple and predictable, a small house, early mornings, evenings that ended before 10. I was not running from love. I just did not trust it anymore, not after a marriage that ended politely and quietly, with a shared look that said we were both too tired to keep trying. She lived next door, Clara, 50 years old. Elegant in a way that did not ask for attention, the kind of woman people notice only after she has already walked past them. We started with simple nods. Short talks about the weather, borrowed tools, polite smiles, nothing dangerous, nothing that crossed a line. That was important to me. Lines are easy to respect when you believe they protect you. The afternoon had happened. I was fixing a loose board on the fence between our yards. The wood had started to shift, and I needed something to focus on, something solid. She stepped out onto her porch with a glass of water in her hand and walked toward me. The sun caught in her hair, and for a second I forgot what I was doing. She handed me the glass. Our fingers brushed lightly, nothing dramatic, just enough to remind me she was there. We stood closer than usual. The conversation slowed down. Then it stopped completely. I realized I was looking at her. Not boldly, not in a careless way, but long enough that silence noticed. She did not turn away, she did not laugh, she did not make it easier for me. She simply met my eyes and said it in a steady voice. If you want to look, just ask. I felt exposed, seen, trusted in a way I did not expect. I let out a nervous laugh and muttered something stupid, pretending the moment had not cracked something open inside me. She smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly, like she understood more about me than I was ready to admit. That night, I could not sleep. I kept hearing her voice in my head, not the words alone, but the calm behind them. Wanting someone used to feel exciting when I was younger. Now it felt like risk. Real risk. The kind that does not just bruise your ego but shifts your entire life. 2 days passed, and her sentence followed me everywhere. Into my morning coffee. Into the quiet hum of my truck on the way to work. Into the grocery store aisles where I caught myself staring at nothing. Every time I stepped onto my back porch, I looked toward her house without meaning to. Then I would look away quickly, annoyed with myself. On the third evening, I was watering the small row of tomatoes I had planted to prove to myself that I was the kind of man who stayed put. I heard the soft click of her gate. I did not need to look to know it was her. She walked along the fence in jeans and a light sweater, her hair pinned back, calm as always. She stopped near the board I had fixed and ran her fingers across it, testing it. "It is solid," she said. "Good," I answered too fast. Silence settled again. Not awkward. Just charged. The porch light from her house caught the edge of her face, and for a moment the world felt smaller, like it had narrowed down to the space between us. She held a folded envelope in her hand, the kind you get from the bank or the county office. Her thumb moved slowly over the corner of it, like she was deciding something. "Can I ask you something?" she said. My chest tightened. "Sure." "My front step is shifting," she said, nodding toward her porch. "I am not asking you to fix it tonight. I just do not trust it." It was a simple request, a neighbor thing. Safe. But her eyes stayed on mine a second longer than necessary, and I felt like she was asking something deeper underneath it. I turned off the hose and followed her across the narrow strip of grass between our yards. Up close, her perfume was soft and clean, warm without being loud. Her house smelled like polished wood and lemon oil when she opened the door. Inside, the space felt lived in but careful. Photos lined the hallway. Clara standing on coastal cliffs, in front of a city skyline, near a snowy mountain lodge. In none of them was there a man close enough to suggest a happy ending. The step did shift slightly when I tested it. I crouched down and pressed against it, checking the frame. I could feel her watching me. "You have done this before," I said. "I have had to," she replied. "When you are alone long enough, you learn." The word alone landed heavier than it should have. I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans. We were close now. Close enough that I could feel the warmth from her body. I did not move away. "I am not always good at neighbors," I admitted. "I moved here to keep my life quiet." Her expression softened just a little. "Quiet is not the same as safe," she said. The words hung in the air. And for the first time since my divorce, I realized that maybe I had not moved to that neighborhood for peace. Maybe I had moved there to hide. I should have stepped back after she said that. Quiet is not the same as safe. But I did not. Instead, I stayed where I was, standing in her living room with the late evening light fading behind us. The air felt thicker than before, like something had shifted, and neither of us wanted to name it. Before I could stop myself, I asked a question that had been sitting in my chest for days. Who was that man the other night? The moment the words left my mouth, I wished I could pull them back. It was not my place. I was just a neighbor. But she did not look offended. She did not look surprised either. She only studied me for a second, like she had expected that question eventually. "A friend," she said calmly. "Someone who thinks he still has a place in my life." My jaw tightened before I could control it. I tried to hide the reaction, but I failed. She noticed. Of course she did. Clara always noticed. "He will be around," she added. "He does not like to lose." Something about the way she said it made my chest feel tight. I told myself I did not care. I had moved there to live quietly. I had promised myself no more complications, no more emotional battles. And yet there I was, standing in her house, feeling something sharp and uncomfortable that I did not want to name. I finished adjusting the step and stood up again. We were close, too close for two people pretending to be casual. I could see the fine lines near her eyes, the kind that come from real laughter and real worry. She did not look fragile, she looked steady. That somehow made her more dangerous to me. She reached out then, her fingers brushing lightly against the back of my hand. It was brief, not dramatic, but steady, like she was grounding something that might shake. "I meant what I said," she murmured, "about asking." My throat felt dry. I did not answer, because if I spoke, I might admit the truth. I was not afraid of looking, I was afraid of wanting, and I was even more afraid of her letting me. She moved toward the kitchen, giving me space, giving me an exit, but I followed anyway. A kettle began to heat on the stove. The quiet hum filled the room. She poured 2 mugs of tea without asking how I took it and handed one to me. We sat by the window. Outside, streetlights flickered on one by one. Inside, the clock ticked softly against the wall. "I am Clara," she said after a moment. "Ethan," I answered. A knock at the door cut through the calm. 3 firm taps. Clara's shoulders straightened slightly, but her face remained composed. She walked to the door and opened it. The man from the car stepped inside. He looked polished, late 40s maybe, confident in a way that filled space quickly. His eyes moved to me almost immediately. "Well," he said slowly. Clara's voice stayed even. "This is Ethan. He is my neighbor." The man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Grant," he said, extending his hand toward me. I shook it. His grip was firm. Testing. He leaned casually against the counter like he belonged there. He asked polite questions that did not feel polite. Where I worked. how long I had lived next door, whether I liked the neighborhood. Each question carried a small edge. I answered briefly. I could feel Clara beside me, calm and unreadable. She did not rush to explain me. She did not rush to comfort him either. She simply stood there. And somehow that seemed to bother him more than anything else. After a few long minutes, Grant checked his watch and said he would not stay. But he did not leave quickly. He moved slowly, like a man making sure his presence was noticed. When the door finally closed behind him, the house felt quieter than before. Clara rested her forehead against the door for a second. Just a second. Then she turned back to me. He is persistent, she said, and used to winning. I nodded, pretending that did not matter to me. Pretending I had not noticed the way his hand brushed her arm on his way out. Pretending my chest had not tightened at the sight. I gathered my tools and thanked her for the tea. At the door, she paused. This does not have to be complicated, she said softly, but it will be if we are not careful. Outside, the night air felt cooler against my skin. I walked back to my house slowly, each step heavier than it should have been. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling for hours. The next week passed in small moments that refused to stay small. Morning greetings that lasted longer than usual. Shared smiles across the fence. Once, when I slipped on wet leaves near the driveway, her hand caught my elbow without hesitation. Firm, warm, steady. Each touch felt deeper than the last. Grant's car appeared again 2 nights later, parked in front of her house like a quiet challenge. I watched from my kitchen window longer than I should have. I hated myself for it. On Friday, my friend Mark dragged me to a quiet bar downtown. I told him everything, or at least most of it. He listened, swirling the ice in his glass. You are not a kid, he said finally. If you are in, be in. If you are out, get out. Just do not hover in the middle. His words followed me home. When I pulled into my driveway, Clara was sitting on her porch wrapped in a light cardigan, watching the street. She looked tired, softer somehow. We talked about simple things at first. Work, the weather, a leaky faucet she needed to fix. But the small talk felt heavier than honesty. Then she said it. He asked me to dinner. Grant. My stomach dropped before I could stop it. She watched my face carefully. I have not answered yet, she added. Silence stretched between us. The street was quiet. No cars passing. No voices. Just the sound of distant crickets. I stepped closer, slowly, aware of every inch of space between us. What do you want, Clara? The question felt bigger than dinner. Bigger than Grant. Bigger than both of us. She inhaled slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. I want something honest, she said, even if it scares me. And for the first time since she had spoken that sentence about looking, I realized the real danger was not desire. It was the possibility that she might choose me. After she said she wanted something honest, even if it scared her, the air between us changed. It was no longer just tension. It was decision waiting to happen. I did not answer right away. I was afraid that if I spoke too quickly, I would say something careless. But I also knew that silence could ruin things just as easily. I am not good at complicated, I finally said. I moved here to keep my life simple, quiet, safe. She looked at me carefully. Safe from what, Ethan? The question settled deep. I did not want to admit it, but the truth was simple. Safe from failing again. Safe from caring too much. Safe from waking up one morning and realizing I had lost something I could not replace. Before I could say any of that, headlights turned the corner of the street. We both saw the car at the same time. Grant. He parked slowly, like he had nowhere else to be, like this was part of his routine. Clara's shoulders straightened, but her face stayed calm. I will handle it, she said quietly. I nodded, even though everything in me wanted to stay. I walked back toward my house, but I did not go inside. I stood near my door, pretending to check my mail while I watched from a distance. Grant stepped out of his car, confident as always. He walked up to Clara like a man who believed he already knew the ending of the story. They spoke quietly. I could not hear the words, but I saw the way he leaned in, The way he smiled like nothing had changed. Clara did not smile back. After a few minutes, she stepped away from him. I saw her shake her head once. Clear, firm. Grant's expression shifted. The easy confidence faded just enough for me to notice. He said something else. She answered calmly. Then he got back into his car and drove away. She stood there for a moment alone on her porch. Then she looked toward my house. I stopped pretending to check the mail and walked over. "Is everything okay?" I asked. She nodded. I told him no. The word felt heavier than anything else she had said that week. "No to dinner?" I asked. "No to all of it," she replied. "To going back to something that already ended once." Relief moved through me so quickly it almost made me dizzy. But I tried not to show too much of it. This was not about winning. "He does not like losing," I said quietly. "Neither do I," she answered. "But this is not about that." We stood there under the porch light, close, but not touching. The night felt still around us. "I need time," she said after a moment. "Not to choose between you and him. That part is clear. I need time to make sure I am not rushing into something just because it feels different." I understood. I did not like it, but I understood. "Take the time you need," I said. The next week felt longer than the last. We did not avoid each other, but we were careful. Conversations stayed light. No heavy questions. No long looks. But even in the distance, I felt her presence. Grant's car appeared once more. Just once. He stayed less than 10 minutes. After that, it did not come back. One afternoon, while I was trimming the hedges, Clara's friend knocked on my door. I had only met her once before. She looked at me like she had already decided something. "She is not choosing him," she said without greeting. "She is fighting herself." That surprised me. "She is scared," her friend continued. "Not of you, of losing herself again. She gave too much before. She does not want to disappear inside someone else's life." After she left, I sat on my couch thinking about that. I had been so focused on whether she would choose me that I had not considered what it cost her to choose anyone at all. That evening, I saw Clara in her yard. She was kneeling in the soil, planting something new along the edge of the fence. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. The sun was low, casting everything in soft light. I walked toward her slowly. "I was not sure you would come over," she said without looking up. "I was not sure you wanted me to," I replied. She finally lifted her eyes to mine. There was no confusion in them now, just honesty. "I do not want safe anymore," she said quietly. "I want real." Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the moment. "You are making a mistake." Grant stood near the sidewalk, watching us. His voice was tight now, controlled but strained. Clara stood up slowly. Calm returned to her like armor sliding into place. "No," she said. "I already made that mistake once." Grant looked at me then, like I was something temporary, but there was doubt in his eyes this time. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He simply turned and walked back to his car. The street felt lighter after he drove away. Clara exhaled slowly. "I am tired of being someone's unfinished story," she said. "I do not want to go back to what almost worked. I want something that is chosen." I stepped closer, giving her time to move away if she wanted to. "I am not here to compete," I told her. "I am here because I feel something real, and I am tired of pretending I do not." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached for my hand. Not dramatic, not rushed, just steady. For the first time since she had spoken that sentence about looking, I did not feel frozen. I felt present. We stood there in the quiet yard, hands joined, not saying anything else. The moment did not need more words. And I knew then that whatever came next would not be simple. But it would be honest. After that evening in the yard, things did not explode into something dramatic. There were no grand speeches, no sudden changes. What shifted was quieter than that. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The house felt different. Not lighter exactly, steadier, like something inside me had stopped running. Clara and I did not announce anything to the neighborhood. We did not need to. People noticed small changes, the way we stood a little closer by the fence. The way her porch lights stayed on later when my truck was still outside. The way mornings sometimes began with 2 mugs resting on her porch railing instead of 1. We were careful, not distant, just intentional. One evening, about a week later, we sat in her living room with the television on low. Neither of us was really watching it. Her feet were tucked under her, and I was stretched out on the other end of the couch. The space between us felt natural now, easy. She reached for my hand without looking at me. Her fingers slid into place like they already knew where they belonged. I looked down at our hands for a second, then back at her. "I do not want to hide anymore," she said quietly. "I am done pretending I do not know what I want." I felt something settle in my chest. "I do not want to hide either," I told her. I spent too long convincing myself quiet meant safe. It just meant alone. She leaned her head against my shoulder. The contact was simple, steady. It did not feel rushed or fragile. It felt chosen. Grant tried once more. A phone call she did not answer. A message she did not return. When she told me about it, her voice was calm. "He was important once," she said, "but he does not get to be important now." There was no anger in her tone. No bitterness. Just clarity. After that, his car never appeared on our street again. Weeks passed and turned into small routines. Grocery trips together. Long walks after dinner when the air cooled and the streetlights flickered on. Conversations that wandered into places we had avoided before. Regrets. Fears. Hopes we had not said out loud in years. We talked about age, not as a problem, but as a fact. About how loving someone at this stage in life meant knowing exactly what you were risking. There was no illusion of starting fresh. We were starting from experience. From lessons learned the hard way. One afternoon, months later, we stood by the fence where everything had begun. The board I had fixed was weathered now but solid. It held. Clara rested her hand on it and smiled faintly. "You never did ask," she said. I knew what she meant. I laughed softly. "I did not need to," I replied. "You showed me everything that mattered." She looked at me with the same calm confidence she had the first day, but now there was warmth in it that had not been there before. "Sometimes I think about that sentence," she said to me. "If you want to look, just ask." At the time, I thought it was about permission, about desire, about something simple, but it was never about looking. It was about being present, about risking connection instead of hiding behind routine, about choosing honesty over comfort. Standing there beside her, the quiet street stretching out ahead of us, I realized I had not frozen that first day because I was afraid of her. I had frozen because I felt my life shifting. And now, with her hand in mine and no reason left to look away, I understood something clearly. I was not hiding anymore, and neither was she.
I hope you enjoyed today's tale. Please tell me in the comments and subscribe, like and share my channel.